And now we round out our Universal Monsters month with a film that is not a Universal production, but the character has kind of been grouped into it. And I just wanted to talk about the film because I don't know what else I'm going to get the chance to talk about Nosferatu. That's what we're doing. Nosferatu today. To end the Halloween season, we are talking about Nosferatu, the German film that is based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but changes the names enough where it could do its own thing without being trapped in the idea of what Dracula is. So I'm like, cool, man, that's fun. Now, if you are like me, you are a person of a certain generation where your first exposure to the character of Nosferatu was probably the episode of SpongeBob where the character is flicking the lights. That's how I knew the character originally, and it scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. Just like the idea of that weird-looking man standing somewhere freaked me out. As I grew up, I learned more about the character, and I've never fully sat down to watch the entire piece. I've seen snippets, I have seen clips. It's one of those films I've always known about in my mind. I've had the cultural awareness of it where it's pretty much I knew everything about it. But it was only today that I got to sit down and actually watch the whole thing. There are different lengths of this film. Depending on what remaster and restoration you watch, it could be an hour to 90 minutes, right? So I watched the one from 97, I do believe is when this happened. Or could even be later, actually, when they did the restoration for this. But this film was originally shot in 1922. So it's 100 years old. What a great way to wrap up this Halloween season with a century-old film. Just think in 100 years when people will be talking about this stuff again, they'll be doing this, but for Barbarian. That's pretty cool to think about, isn't it? So we have our first big horror film of all time, pretty much, in Nosferatu. That kind of like hit the cultural relevance in a huge way, right? It was actually terrifying. This film, I think more than any other horror movie we've talked about, actually scared me. I can't explain it because there's really nothing scary happening in the film. Just what it's presenting freaks me out a lot. So, I've talked about a couple other silent films on the channel before. This might be the third silent film we're talking about. Easily my favorite of the three. The thing is, maybe it's because I just have such like a connection to the Bram Stoker name, to the Dracula identity, that anytime we play in that world, I get excited. Maybe that's just what this is. But I think it's just because, man, it looks great. It takes itself super seriously. It's trying so hard. That works. It is a silent film, like I said, meaning the performances are dramatic. Everything is over the top. There is word bubbles for you to read that appear on screen. You're like, here is the talking part. Here's the words they're saying. There's also a lot of scripture, and it's surprising. A couple of things that very much surprised me is the amount of, like, talks about, like, from a narrative, like, there is a narrator describing the events to you as, like, using, like, the first person, like, I, me. It's very interesting. I thought that was such a unique idea that I guess makes sense for this time period, especially when you can't use actual dialogue. You are presenting the story as it was written, so that's kind of a fun concept to play with, but then you see literal, like, depictions from books and stuff. And I'm like, oh, man. Is a person from today's audience that isn't, like, ingrained in this stuff going to have the patience for this film? That's a whole other topic I kind of want to get into later. Just like, can today's child watch a silent film? Can they be engrossed with what's on screen enough for that to happen? Personally, I don't think so. But it's because I'm different that this worked for me. And I really just liked the use of it. And the thing I was like, the words all sound great. They are so prolific and big. They're big words. And they're talking about this beautiful stuff. I love the term death ship. I thought that was such a cool idea. When he's traveling abroad, it was just so intense and riveting, and I loved it. So you're probably thinking, what is the plot of Nosferatu? Well, the characters are kind of based on the works of Bram Stoker's Dracula. The names are changed. We are following the lead, Thomas Hutter, and he's like this estate agent, and they get a call from this guy in Transylvania, Count Orloff, and he's like, hey, I think I'm going to buy like the property of land in your town. Can you have somebody like help me and tell me about it? So this guy named Nock, who's like the real estate agent, sends Hutter overseas to go talk to this Count Orloff. And you're like, that is so specific and weird. Like, there's nothing scary about that premise. If anything, it makes no sense where you're going to send a guy on a boat just to go get this guy to see a house. It's very weird. But this man, Thomas, he also has a beautiful wife, this pretty figure that is going to haunt our lead for a while now. It's kind of weird. And look, there's a lot of themes in this story that we could explore. Things about love and sin and the idea of madness and God. And it does take some inspiration from classic vampire stuff. But the thing I really wasn't expecting to be a huge component of this movie, again, it's not a film I've seen all of at once. So I knew there was the connection of like the rats and the Dracula stuff. But just the idea of Orlov presenting the plague was really weird. Like, it just caught me off guard a minute. I was like, whoa, we're dealing with the plague theme a lot in this story. I guess it's still kind of fresh in people's mind at the time because this film, 1922, based on a novel in 1897 that takes place in 1838. There are still people who are around that are familiar with, like, surviving that. The same way people today would treat a COVID story, you know? I think that's very fascinating. But I was like, wow, we're really dealing with this a lot. And oh my goodness, later on in the story when it's like, okay, Transylvania is wiped out from the plague. It spreads back to wherever the hell we are in the world. I can't remember where they said that this guy's based out of, but the way they're like, okay, everybody get inside and quarantine. Stay there now. The plague is coming. Don't interact outside. Don't be outside. Stay away from people. Don't touch anybody. I was like, oh my God, we have learned nothing in our lives, have we? That was amazing. Like, that entire idea really shook me in ways I wasn't expecting. It might just be because of post-COVID loosely world, but I was like, oh man, that was not what I was expecting from this story. And you're probably here like, just talk about Orlov. That's what we're here for. Orlov is, well, we'll get to Orlov, but that's like the least interesting part of the film to me because of like, yeah, the plague stuff freaked me out. The way everybody is just like concerned about like a disease coming to them was so interesting to me. That stuff just was so gripping and fascinating. And then we have Thomas land in Transylvania, and he's like warned by the people of the town, like, that guy's a freak, you should not go see him. And this is what I'm going to say. I've talked about a couple horror films on this channel. I don't get scared very easily. The stuff that freaks me out, I've talked about a lot, is people standing very still and open doors. And that is everything Orlov does in this movie. It's terrifying. There's a few scenes throughout the entirety that freaked me out where I'm like, I hate what I'm seeing here. Yes, it's in these weird sepia colors that don't really add anything, and today's audience might not be scared about that, but the scenes that freaked me out, there's two that come to mind when I think about it. The one at the dinner table when Hutter is eating with Orlov and he cuts his finger accidentally. And then you see Orlov's like, oh, you don't want to waste that precious blood. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then Orlov follows him into the next room as he's freaking out. That scared me because I'm like, oh, I hate a strange looking man who's so crouched together with big shoulders up, just his arms out in this weird position, big weird face. That freaks me out so much. That scares me more than anything. That guy just following you, trying to suck your finger, is a literal nightmare for me. I hate the idea of people watching me do anything. Good thing I'm in the public eye, isn't it? That was so scary. And then he's like, I'm just going to retreat to my room. Goodbye. And then later on in another day, when he sees Orlov down the hall through his door, and he's just like, I'm going to hide under my blanket so I don't have to look at this guy. And he just appears in the room. That is terrifying. I hate that. Again, I hate door stuff. Door stuff freaks me out so much. Just seeing somebody through a series of doors watching you is enough to scare me for life. I hate that. That was very scary. And then the plan is, I guess, Orlov has some weird connection to Thomas's wife, and he's like, I gotta go see this broad, because I'm buying your house next door to you. So he puts himself, you see like the footage is sped up, of course, because it's very cool that way. He's putting himself in a coffin. He's about to get on a boat. You see a couple guys. I love the scene on the docks where these guys are examining the crates and they open one and a bunch of dirt spills out because he needs dirt in order to actually sleep. He needs to sleep on his birth soil. It's freaking sweet. It is sweet. That was so cool. And then he just gets overseas and everything is just insane and the plague hits and COVID and everything's so crazy. It's beautiful. Look, it's the acting's over the top, but that's the point. People have huge reactions. People are in very stiff moments and movements. It's very fun to see. But the use of just camera work and shadows, I don't think we've done anything this impressive in this format in a long time. The scene I'm talking about, it's the thumbnail where it's like the shadow walking up the steps and putting its hand on the girl and reaching down to caress her. Oh my god, is it beautiful. Like, we don't do that today. With today's technology, we're not making anything that looks that freaking good. It's insane. And the fact that this design, this Nosferatu design, is still scary, that's an A+. Like, it's actually terrifying. This guy is weird. He's gonna hurt you. I love it. I genuinely think it's impressive and very cool stuff to see. Everything about this film hit all the right notes for me. It was scary. The silent film stuff, which is hard to get into, especially when you are not in the right mood for it. It's hard to focus on. It all worked great. Everything felt beautiful. Everything was shot beautifully. The color shifts will upset a lot of younger people. If you're watching some of the restored stuff, it switches from a yellow to a blue to a pinkish color. And that just happens, but this film's 100 years old. When you're 100, you'd be lucky to look as good as this does. I think it's really impressive. Everything about this worked for me. I was terrified. And that's kind of cool. And its message is still relevant today. Don't trust a rat. Don't trust a weird foreign guy. They'll probably just burn in the sunlight the moment they step foot in it. The dude was so horny, he burned the minute he saw this girl, he burned and forgot who he was. That's kind of cool. That is love. But no, man, that's horrific tales, because Nosferatu is how we are going to cap off the wondrous world that is the monsters of old horror, the universal monsters. Why not end with one that's not one? A German film that hates Dracula and won't use his name. It's beautiful, isn't it? Kind of fun. So thank you guys for watching this rendition of Movie Tales. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.